everybody, welcome back to 5-Digit Films, the channel for all things amputee. So in the last video I kind of gave you a rundown of what happened to me, and I actually made a second video going over the first prosthetic that I got. However, before I get to that video, I want to make you guys a short video of what to expect in the meantime. There's going to be some time in between when you get injured or when you get amputated to when you get your first prosthetic. And of course, this is going to depend largely on what actually happened, and it also kind of depends on how your insurance is working out. What I mean is, for myself, it took about 4 months from the time I was injured to the time I got my first prosthetic. And the reason being is that I actually had to wait for this to shrink back to normal size. That process can take a lot more time than what you think. It's more than a week or 2 weeks. When your body experiences something traumatic like that, the swelling is going to last for could be months, depending on your health, your age, your diet. It could be longer, it could be shorter. For me, the time span actually seemed a little bit shorter than what it should have been. I recovered really fast. My stitches and staples were taken out 2 weeks after my initial, well, I guess my final surgery after my initial amputation. So this is what we have left. Nice and pretty. But the swelling took at least a good month or 2 months to go down. Now, how they're going to do that, it may vary depending on what you have happen and who you are using as a occupational therapist or a prosthetic company. So for me, we went through a couple stages of what are called shrinkers, stump shrinkers. They make your stump smaller. So the first one that I was in was something kind of like this. It's just an elastic material that goes on your arm like a big sock. And they'll typically have you wear this. I think for me at first it was a few hours a day because you don't want to constrict it too much, hence being several stages of stump shrinkers. But what I actually found is that wearing my shrinker at night actually helped me sleep a little bit better. It actually gave me some comfort, and they say that will happen. So from there, the next thing you might go to is one like this. Now this one, you slide it onto your arm and then you double it over back. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I pull it up on my arm, and this one's pretty long. And you see that ring right there? So you want to get that nice and tight. And then what you want to do is double it back over. It's been a long time since I've worn these, so I'm a little bit out of practice. So there, that's about what you're looking for. So that's stump shrinkers. Like I said, you're probably going to have to go through a couple stages of those. And by stages, I mean different tightness levels. Again, they don't want to start you out with anything as extreme as the second one, because that can also cut off circulation and cause more problems. Plus, you have a lot of fluid buildup, and especially when you just got your stitches and staples out, especially if you have a compound suture, I guess you would call it. Like for me, I had one coming around this way, one coming around this way, and one coming here. So I had kind of a Y where those came together, and that section took a long time to heal up. And if I had my stump shrinker on too long, fluid would actually leak out of it, and that was pretty nasty. But it's not uncommon. So if that happens to you, don't worry about it. With something like this, you're looking more for, a split in your incision. So that was probably the first part. A lot of the time in between your amputation and when you get your prosthetics is just waiting. There's a lot that has to be done. And in this time, you're going to get a lot of phone calls, whether you are an adult or your legal guardian is going to get a lot of phone calls. You're going to get phone calls from the doctor, from the occupational therapist. You're going to get phone calls from the prosthetic company if you have one at this point. If not, you're going to be trying to find one. You're going to get, if it's a workers' comp case, you're probably going to get a kind of the equivalent of an insurance adjuster. In my case, it was a company called One Call. They pretty much specialized in medical devices, and they spoke with me and they spoke with the prosthetic company. The prosthetic company told them pretty much what we needed, and they would either accept or deny that, and we'd move on from there. So you're going to get a lot of phone calls. In the first couple weeks, I'm going to say I was getting anywhere from as little as 5 phone calls a day to 20 phone calls a day. And you got to remember too, your family and friends are going to be checking up on you. People are going to come out of the woodwork, and you hopefully will get a lot of support from them. The next thing will probably be your initial appointment at your prosthetic company. So what they're going to do basically is they are going to look at what you have, evaluate it, try to decide how much control you initially have. For instance, in my case, I'll see if I can show you guys. See how my stump is moving? That's actually me going like this. And I can feel my individual fingers still, even though they're not there because of the nerves. So because of the amount of control I had, they wanted to put me in something that required a little bit more control. So again, this is going to be something that is largely dependent on either how much money you have yourself, what kind of insurance you have, or if this is a workers' comp case. That is going to be the biggest determining factor as far as what kind of prosthetics you get. A lot of people end up with a really basic cable operated, or what they call a body powered prosthetic. Still very expensive, but if you don't have insurance, or you don't have insurance that will cover some of these more high quality prosthetics like I have, or I guess I shouldn't say high quality, high tech prosthetics that I have, then you probably will end up with a body powered device, which in later videos I will show you what I have as far as my body powered device goes. So back to the initial visit at the prosthetic company. Like I said, they are going to basically make some measurements and try to determine a timeline as far as when they can start fitting you for a prosthetic. And they're also going to then kind of get an idea of what prosthetics they want to put you in. And from there, then they can go on, and in my case, they would contact my adjuster, One Call, and tell them what they want to give me. And then from there, One Call will either approve or deny it. In my case, they approved it, and then the workers' comp insurance paid out. In my case, I went through accident fund. That's the workers' comp insurance that my company had. So in that scenario, I was very fortunate. From the time I got injured up to this point, I really didn't have to do much. After your initial appointment with the prosthetist, my bet is that you're probably going to be going through occupational therapy, especially if it is a workers' comp case. They want to get you back to work as soon as possible. So for me, what they were looking for was the range of movement I had. So I can pretty much straighten my arm out and bend it in almost as far as I can with my right hand. My right arm actually has a couple more degrees of freedom, even though you really can't see it on camera. But I was pretty good to go right off the bat. Now, granted, straightening my arm out like that was kind of painful, but since I was able to do it pretty much right off the rip, my occupational therapy didn't really last long. They just basically had a list of stretches and exercises. They wanted me to flex the muscles in my forearm to make sure they didn't atrophy so small that they couldn't be used anymore. And in that case, I mean, I was constantly working on that. So do what your occupational therapist tells you to. The more you listen to them, the more you do what they say, and the more you push yourself are going to largely determine how fast you can get through that occupational therapy and how fast you can get into your first prosthetics if that's the direction you end up going. Now, prosthetics aren't for everybody. I've noticed that there's a few other YouTubers out there that they don't need their prosthetics. Personally, I'm just under 2 years out from my amputation. Personally, I don't see how they're able to do that. I rely heavily on my prosthetics, and the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is not wearing out my right hand. I'm 28 now, so I've got like 40 more years of working before I hopefully will be able to retire, and I'm going to need this. And I've got a lot of things in my personal life, my other channel, Area 52, I do a lot of projects there, so I want to be able to use it in my personal and professional life. So I rely heavily on prosthetics to kind of slow the rate at which I wear my right hand out. It's inevitable, it's going to happen, but the more you use your prosthetics and the better you get at using your prosthetics, the less you are going to wear out the other extremities of your body. In my case, obviously, my hands don't affect my feet too much, but my prosthetic definitely affects my right hand. So those are going to kind of be the steps that are going to happen from the time you have your amputation or your injury or your initial surgeries all the way up until when you start, I wouldn't say get your first prosthetics, but when you start moving in that direction. When the swelling goes down, everything is paid for, everything is approved, you get fitted for your prosthetic, and then from there you move on to actually working towards getting your prosthetic. Now, that process is pretty time consuming. In my case, I worked with SRT Prosthetics. They're based in Indianapolis. I believe they're owned by a company called Oser. And they have facilities in Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, and Kokomo, Indiana, which all of them are about an hour or less away from me. So they have other facilities too, but that's the company I worked with. And as I worked with them, the first step was meeting up with them, basically giving them an idea of what I had to work with, and then they could kind of judge the timeline. They put me, the occupational therapist put me in this very light stump shrinker. SRT put me in this stump shrinker. And it took a couple visits. They were a few weeks apart, if I remember right. And we went through like 3 different stages of stump shrinkers before they finally decided that my arm had shrunk down to what would be the normal size. I still do, I still do stuff like that. Air quotes. I don't, old habits die hard, I guess. We had to go through several sets of stump shrinkers before they finally got my stump down to a size they were happy with. Once we got my stump shrunken down, then it was time to cast me for my first prosthetic. They use a really simple method. They literally take old plaster casts, wrap it around your arm, let it harden. And then from that, they can pour a mold into that cast material once it completely dries and hardens. And then they have basically a carbon copy of your extremity. And then from there, they can form the prosthetic around it. Where SRT actually differs from some other prosthetic companies is that they put you in a prototype prosthetic. They don't just make it all in one shot because they want to make sure that your prosthetic fits and works properly before they send you home with it. So I thought that was a really cool extra step. It's not a foolproof plan, but it definitely makes it better. And the more feedback that you can give your prosthetic company if they go through this extra step, the better off it's going to be. At either rate, when it's in that final state, the only way you can make adjustments to it, or I guess major adjustments to it, like sensor placements and things of that nature, is to destroy it and start over again. So again, the more feedback that you can give your prosthetic company, the better final result you're going to get with your prosthetics. So that's all I have for you guys today in this video. Feel free to make some comments down below and let me know if you have any questions on what to expect from the time you're injured to the time you're looking at getting your first prosthetics, if that's the route you go. If you guys want to see some of the stuff that I'm working on in my other channel, it's Area 52, and I've got some projects of mine on there that, you know, it's just stuff that I'm working on. Later I'll get into some other topics on that channel. Right now that's what I'm doing, and I'm actually really excited because the latest video that I put on there where I work on my new car, I feel like I was able to accomplish that task as quick as I could have with two hands. So if you go and you subscribe and like those videos and kind of follow along as I produce more videos, same with this channel, you guys will get to kind of experience my growth. 2 years versus 26 with two hands. So I'm still in the what I would consider infant stages of being an amputee. But I also feel like I have enough information for you guys that it's time to start passing it along before I start forgetting the little things, like I almost did here with this video. I almost skipped right over this section, and in my opinion, this is a very important section to talk about. So again, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and drop them down below, and we will see you in the next video where I talk to you about my first prosthetic. Have a great day, everybody.